Chapter 4. Crime Passional? 7:50 a.m. Saturday 15th of August, 1970. Hôtel Albert, Rue du Faubourg Saint-Denis, Paris. Next morning Liana is fresh as a daisy, no sign of a hangover, so we go down to breakfast nice and early. The lobby holds a small crowd of gendarmes. I expect that they've come to have a look at our passports, as we've been told is the French custom. Odd that they seem to be clustered around the entrance instead of the reception desk, but every institution does things in its own way. We make our way into the dining room, where some hotel guests, including the Frenchman who was plying Liana with drink last night, are sitting at tables. No one seems to have had their breakfast served to them yet. Perhaps we are too early. Aileen and Senga are sitting at a table for 4, so we go to join them. On our way over we chorus a good morning to Valerie and Yvonne, who are sitting with the 2 hand-holding young men from the train. They are on our package tour as well. Then I see the fat businessman sitting alone, smoking. Before breakfast. What a way to begin the day, smoking like a chimney. But out of politeness I acknowledge him with a little wave. Hardly have we begun to sit down, we haven't said a word to Aileen and Senga yet, when a gendarme bustles in, followed by Fergal and the Major. This morning the Major is not in uniform. He's wearing a smart suit. Odder and odder. But I have no time to wonder, for the gendarme waves them to the nearest table and produces a pointer from somewhere. Perhaps the hotel keeps a store of them for use by convention attendees. He raps it against the wall for attention. I am Inspector Claremont. The inspector's English is flawless, and he doesn't waste words. Charlie Stout was killed last night. We are all suspects. The chief suspect, he moves the pointer to her, is Liana. The businessman asks, calmly, what had happened. The inspector tells us all that Mr. Stout was strangled and his body thrown from the top of the Eiffel Tower. Just as Miss Stewart wishes. No. He was strangled, he was throttled, every bone in his body was broken. I am shocked by his callous disregard for Yvonne's feelings, but she looks as calm as always. This is complete nonsense. I say, in the same tone I'd used to freeze a girl who was giving me some ridiculous excuse for not having done her homework. Miss Stewart cannot possibly be the culprit. She's afraid of heights. She couldn't have thrown Mr. Stout from the top of the Eiffel Tower. Miss Stewart couldn't even have set foot on the top of the Eiffel Tower. She'd have collapsed before she could get that high. Yes, perhaps. We will check. The man seems to be quite reasonable. I begin to think that maybe the Prime Minister is right, and Britain should join the European community after all. And Harold Wilson, who was our Prime Minister until just a few weeks ago, thought the same way. I should have realized that when 2 men as clever as Edward Heath and Harold Wilson for once agree on something, then they'd be right. So meantime we will impound Miss Stewart's passport. No. A sensible compromise. Liana nods. I nod. Yes, but Miss Stewart's passport is not in the hotel safe. Miss Stewart has flouted our regulation, she did not give up her passport. Why? Liana looks bewildered. I realize why. She has never been near the reception desk. She doesn't know about having to give up her passport. I think back to the last time I saw Liana's passport, when we boarded the ferry. She put it into the top of her smallest suitcase. Her little case was in the pile of luggage sitting beside me as I checked in, now piled up in our room. As briefly as I can, I explain it all. The inspector's lip curls, but he nods. He blows a whistle. Instantly another gendarme comes through the door, to whom his pointer indicates our table. The gendarme moves towards us. So, Miss Stewart, you will give to my man your room key and the key to this traveling case, no? Liane nods eagerly and pulls a key ring out of her bag. She selects the right key and holds it up. But I know she doesn't have a room key. Before the inspector can curl his lip at us again, I hand over my giant brass key fob. I point to the engraved numbers. Room 101. The gendarme takes the keys and leaves. Now, we move on. Miss Stewart, do you know anyone in Paris? Have you met or spoken to anyone at all since arriving in Paris, who is not in this room? He points again, and our waiter from last night moves forward. I look for the maitre d'. He is not in the room. Then I realize, he had gone off duty by the time we brought Liana into the dining room with us to eat. The inspector's pointer moves, and the hotel manager who was filling in for the barman last night steps forward. Again the pointer moves, points, and now we all look at the powder room attendant. Liana looks around slowly. She is confused, I can see, and I think that she shakes her head more in confusion than to agree that everyone she has met is present, but indeed, who could she have met since arriving in Paris who is not in this room? We move on. He speaks briefly in rapid French. Non. Says the waiter. Non. Says the hotel manager. Non. Says the man who was buying Liana drinks. Non. Says the powder room attendant. Now, Miss Stewart, I have asked these people if any of them were with you, saw you, or spoke to you, between 8:50 p.m. and 10:15 p.m. last night. They say no. Do you say yes? Liana shakes her head and whispers no. We move on. I do not believe that anyone in this room was with you between 8:50 p.m. and 10:15 p.m. last night. If anyone wishes to challenge my belief, let him speak now. I am not yet fearful for Liana, because my mind is occupied by the annoying way Inspector Claremont chooses to express himself. He's so pompous. And doesn't he realize that let him speak is not what nice people say in these enlightened times when they are talking in mixed company? I challenge. I say it automatically, and then I tumble to it that I can't, because I don't know exactly when Liana went off to the powder room, but it was probably before 9:15. And I don't know exactly when we found Liana in the bar, but it was near 10:15. Yes? Inspector Claremont is all polite interest. I do my best. That man, I point at him, was with Miss Stewart earlier than 10:15 last night. He was drinking in the bar with her. But Liana is sadly shaking her head. And the inspector's lip is curling again. Ah, but no, Miss Maguire. Monsieur joined Miss Stewart at exactly 10:16 p.m. You and Mrs. Stout arrived at 10:17 p.m. He would certainly have liked to drink with Miss Stewart, but he was given no opportunity to do so. I have wronged Liana. She did not forget that she is a lady, at least not so far as to permit a stranger to buy her a drink. And then the implication hits me. Last night Liana disappeared for just under an hour and a half, and this man thinks that was time enough for her to have killed Charlie Stout. The gendarme returns, and brings the keys not to us, but to the inspector. They have a rapid low-voiced conversation in French. Miss Stewart, your passport is not in any of your luggage. It is not anywhere visible in the room. Miss Maguire, naturally my man has not searched your luggage. He did not have your permission, also it is locked. Do you say that Miss Stewart's passport is in your possession? I shake my head. We cannot permit that a chief suspect who is a foreign national remains at liberty in Paris when we do not hold that person's passport. Indeed, it is against regulations even when no crime has been committed. He blows his whistle again, and as the gendarmes lead Liana away with her hands cuffed behind her back, I recognize with some bitterness and some regret that my country's stance on the European community is absolutely sound. We should keep these Frenchies as far away as we possibly can. I only realize that I've said this out loud when the Major swivels toward me and barks out, "Quite right, my dear. Very well put. We should toddle down to the police station now and rescue your friend from those clots, should we not? Obviously I've got to go and do whatever I can for poor Liana, but I don't want company, and particularly not his. It was this lunatic's rage which drove Liana into the frenzy that has brought her under suspicion." The Major continues, "It's very unusual for a gendarme to speak English as well as that inspector does. How's your French, dear lady? I don't normally mention it, no sense in letting the side down, but I speak French like a native. I was stationed here during the war, you know. I was starting primary school when World War II was ending. However, his French is better than mine, and he certainly owes Liana any help he can give her." We toddle down to the police station. The Major is very efficient. In what feels like no time, we're sitting in an interview room with an Inspector Toussaint, whose English is very good. But I'm not under any illusion that by myself I could have achieved the same result. For some reason, the Major is respected here. Inspector Toussaint explains the French system to me. They have something called a dossier. French officials get a dossier together by asking anyone they like a lot of questions. Everyone must answer, but the official is not allowed to criticize or query the answers. They can only ask another person if that person agrees or disagrees with the answers given, and what their own answers are. This explains why Inspector Clermont spoke in that odd, pompous way. He asked his questions, he got answers, he gave Liana and me an opportunity to contradict what he had heard. I suppose that given the peculiar French system, he's been quite fair. In the old days, Inspector Toussaint tells me, the dossier would take days and days to get, with everyone sitting in court in front of a magistrate and writing down all the questions and answers in longhand. Now a suitable official takes the dossier. The purpose of a dossier is to get all the facts clear. If new facts come to light, there will be another hearing, and everything about the new facts will be recorded too. Sometimes the official is an inspector in the gendarmes. Or maybe some outside expert takes the dossier. Or an official in another department. If the dossier shows that the suspect could not have committed the crime, then the suspect goes free. The case is closed against that person and it is not reopened. But if a dossier shows that most certainly the suspect could have committed the crime, then the suspect is brought to trial. If the facts show that it's quite likely that the suspect could have committed the crime, then just as we do, the French will consider whether there is a big flight risk danger. If they think that there is a big risk, then the suspect gets locked up until he or she is brought before a magistrate who decides whether that person can be free until trial or will stay locked up. Inspector Toussaint is being kind to me, but he makes it quite clear that unless Liana's passport is surrendered, she will stay locked up. And because the passport wasn't where it should have been, maybe she will stay locked up anyway. Liana's passport is missing. The French police do not like that. The longer it stays missing, the less likely they will be to believe that it went missing in an innocent way. The only ray of hope, so far as I can see, is new facts coming to light. So I ask the inspector when he thinks the next dossier hearing will be. He coughs and gets embarrassed. There is only a second dossier hearing, he explains, when something very unusual happens, something which makes it obvious that significant facts were missed first time around. By various polite circumlocutions he gets me to understand that the Sûreté Nationale do not believe that significant facts have been missed. They are not out there looking for new facts. I ask if I will be allowed to bring Liana clothes and books and any other comforts. Inspector Toussaint gives me a list of forbidden items. He says that I can visit every day and bring Liana anything that's not on the forbidden list. He also says that I can ask for him at the police station entrance desk anytime because he will help me if he can. I ask for a copy of the dossier and he gets one run off for me. When they bring me my copy, they also bring one for the Major. He is respected here. I suddenly feel sure that without his help, I would not have been given my own copy of the dossier. Inspector Toussaint's last words, intended to comfort me, come as a huge shock. Do not worry. Your friend will be quite safe. She will put in the defense of crime passionnel. She is a woman of great passion, many witnesses will attest to this. She goes on impulse to see the Eiffel Tower, which many have heard her admire. There, unexpectedly she finds the man she hates, who has given her excellent cause to hate him. In a moment of overmastering passion, she kills him. She will be acquitted on this defense. In a year or so, she will be able to put all this behind her and return to Scotland. As we leave the police station, the Major offers me a cup of tea. I laugh bitterly. French so-called tea on top of everything else, I think. No thanks. No, no, dear lady. Remonstrates the Major, I promise you some real tea. I've put up at the out-of-the-way little place where I'm staying because I can get proper English tea there. He notices my frown and adds hastily, British tea, I mean. The Major's idea of an out-of-the-way little place turns out to be the most palatial hotel that I have ever seen. We go through to a beautiful large public room which is full of comfortable sofas, but it doesn't have a bar and it doesn't have restaurant fittings either. In fact, I've never seen anything like it. A waiter in a tailcoat glides in and places a little set of tables in front of the 3 sofas in a semicircle where the Major has paused. We sit. A second waiter appears almost instantly, carrying a tray on which there is a teapot, teacups and saucers, spoons, sugar and milk, lemon slices, an empty hot water jug, slops bowl, a very small tea caddy, and an electric kettle. As if it were the most ordinary thing in the world, the first waiter takes the kettle, finds a wall socket, and plugs it in, whilst the second lays out the tea things. He takes the slops bowl, a spoon, the teapot, and tea caddy over to the first waiter, who warms the pot and then plugs in the kettle again. When the water is bubbly boiling, tea is ceremoniously made, and the teapot placed in front of the Major. By this time a third waiter has arrived with little side plates, cake knives and forks, and a 2-tier cake stand crammed with cakes. These are placed beside the teapot just as the second waiter comes over with linen napkins, which he opens onto our laps with a flourish. All 3 waiters stand near the Major, beaming at him. We might as well be comfortable. He says, "Do you fancy a sandwich?" I shake my head and he flicks a hand at the waiters, who glide out as silently as they glided in. "Will you be mother, my dear?" I pour the tea. It is the best tea I have ever tasted, a glorious golden Ceylon. Even in my anguish for Liana, I take comfort from the taste and feel of that tea. We drink silently. "Now, I'll help you if I can, Miss Maguire. What's your plan?" Even after a reviving cup of tea, I'm still too upset to understand things quickly. What plan is he talking about? But all I say is, "Do please call me Mari." "And I'm Ellis. Now that we're friends, how can I help you, Mari?" Sometimes the classless society isn't all it's cracked up to be. I suppose it's natural enough that a man as old school as the Major would take an invitation to call me by my first name as the beginning of a friendship. He's probably never even heard of the classless society. "Major," I begin hesitantly. "Ellis." "Well, I asked for that one. Ellis, I don't know what you mean. It's Liana who needs help." "Of course. I meant, how can I be of most use to you in your plan to get her freed?" "Plan? I don't have any plan." "Ah yes, you haven't read the dossier yet. You want to study it before forming your plan." "Ellis, I'm a schoolteacher, not a master criminal. I can't break Liana out of jail." "Wouldn't do any good if you did, they'd catch her at the border. Best border team I know. No, you'll have to prove her innocence, of course. How can I help?" "Yours to command, dear lady, I assure you." Best border team he knows. Who is this man? And why does the Sûreté respect him? The Sûreté wouldn't have given me that dossier if you hadn't asked them to, would they, Ellis? Certainly they would. Always play a straight bat, those fellows. Of course they would have given you the case papers. And then he adds with a secret little grin, "in a few days or so." He pats my shoulder awkwardly. "Back up, Mari. I have to follow your lead, my dear girl. I don't know your friend at all, so it's up to you to think this one through. But if she killed that scoundrel of a taxman, I'm no judge of character." He winks, "and they don't call me Gimlet for nothing." "You don't understand, Ellis." I wail. "She did vanish for well over an hour last night. Her passport has vanished too. Of course I know that she didn't kill Charlie Stout, but how could I ever convince anyone else? I'm just a schoolteacher, I'm not a detective. And I have to get on a train to Istanbul in under 7 days' time." I break down, sobbing and wiping angrily at my eyes. The Major sits back. "Then you'll have to crack this case in the next 6 days, won't you?"